Thank you very much. Welcome to the meeting of Cabinet. My name is Jonathan Lester. I'm the leader of Herefordshire Council and will be chairing the meeting. In addition to those councillors present in the room, do we have any councillors attending remotely? Can I just check, Councillor Fagan, can you see us and hear us?
Yes, I can. Good afternoon. I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's great to have you with us. We have no Cabinet members or Cabinet support joining remotely, and we have all group leaders attending in the room. And we've got one, Councillor Fagan's Children's Scrutiny Chair. Do we have any other scrutiny chairs apart from our group leaders who double up as scrutiny chairs? No? Right, okay. We also have a number of officers who are attending, and if I can ask them to introduce themselves when called upon. So I'll now formally open the meeting. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on Herefordshire Council's website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on Herefordshire Council's YouTube channel and making a recording. To ensure that the recording quality is maintained, please speak clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you are not speaking. Please ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Not quite sure what those other devices are apart from laptops. Okay. Others are permitted to film and photograph or record their public meetings, provided that this does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If any members of the public attending do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please notify to a member of staff. Thank you. As we move through the agenda, in addition to discussion by Cabinet members, I will invite group leaders or their representatives to indicate if they wish to provide views or questions from their group on each item. Where appropriate, we will also call on scrutiny chairpersons to comment on behalf of their committees. And group leaders will be permitted to speak once on each item. Voting will be undertaken by a show of hands in the room. So we move to the first item on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. Yes, we have apologies from Councillors Gandy, Stark and Crockett. Are there any other apologies? Oh, Councillor Mason. Item 2 is declarations of interests. Are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interests for items on today's agenda? No. Thank you. We move to item 3, which is minutes of the previous meetings for the 5th and the 26th of October. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. Cabinet members, are you content that the minutes of the 5th and the 26th of October are a correct and accurate record? Thank you. So we now go to agenda item 4, which is to receive any questions from members of the public. Members of the public have the opportunity to submit questions to Cabinet in writing ahead of the meeting. We have received 2 questions for this meeting and the responses have been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. Those who have submitted questions have been given the opportunity to submit a written supplementary question. The supplementary questions are to be no more than 1 minute in length and must include a question. I may exercise some discretion, but if I can, there is the possibility of asking the questioner to stop if they exceed the time limit. So I will now ask for the clerk to go to the questions, and the first question is from Jeremy Milne.
Thank you. We've received one question from Jeremy Milne. I'll just bring it up on screen. The supplementary question is, thank you for your response to my question about the rising cost of the council of its 13 years maintaining the supporting scaffolding at Jacob's Court. It is disappointing that a building which passed planning and building control just 20 years ago should so soon have been found defective. What is the expected timescale for resolving these issues and how will the council recover the money from the building owners?
Thank you. And can I go to Councillor Swinglehurst to answer the supplementary question?
Thank you, Leader, and thank you to Mr Milne for the supplementary question. As the planning application for the replacement of the windows has now been approved, we are working with the property owner to finalise timescales for taking the development forward and for the scaffolding to be removed. The council will seek to fully recover the costs incurred. The works were pursuant to Section 78 of the Building Act 1984, and that includes provisions that enable the recovery of reasonable costs incurred by the local authority. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Swinglehurst, do we have any more supplementary questions? No. So agenda item 5 is to receive any questions from councillors. We have received one question from Councillor Crockett, but have we received a supplementary question?
We've received one supplementary, but it was out of time, so it's been declined.
Councillor Durkin.
Chairman, the public question to me has not been spoken of at the moment. I haven't replied to it. It's on the agenda. Public questions. Number 2.
Yes, your answer's been published, but we haven't received a supplementary. Not that I'm aware. No. Okay, so we move to agenda item 6, which is reports from scrutiny committees. We have received 2 reports from the Connected Communities Scrutiny Committee, which are at pages 11 and 19 of the agenda pack. And this is regarding the new Herefordshire Local Transport Plan and the Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan. Councillor Chowns, as chairperson, is here to introduce the recommendations from the committee. So thank you, Councillor Chowns. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Leader. You'll be delighted to know that I don't intend to read out all of the recommendations one by one of these 2 reports this time. What I thought I would do is just briefly summarise the sort of the core of the conversations. I think the recommendations are self-explanatory, and it was sensible to take these 2 items together, the local transport plan and the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan. There were a few key themes that I'd like to sort of bring out. I mean, one is around the amount of data that we were given as a scrutiny committee to look at. Reference was made in our really quite short papers. We had a paper pack, I think, of 42 pages, which is, you know, some people might be delighted to get such a short paper pack, but actually we were looking for more information. Reference had been made to background papers which weren't provided, and so you'll see that, you know, we've recommended that background papers are published so that scrutiny can do its job. Scrutiny needs to see as much detail as possible in order to do its job effectively. A second key theme that emerged was around public consultation. You know, with both of these items of work, and we went into this in quite a bit of detail, you know, there were sort of outline work plans that indicated that, you know, the public would have a chance to feed in, but actually we're in one case a year through the work without the public being consulted at all, and the public are very well informed about transport and cycling and walking infrastructure in Hereford because they use it all the time. And I think it would be very, very helpful to actually give people the opportunity to feed in, to say where the bottlenecks are, where the opportunities are for little tweaks and improvements, where they'd like to see major infrastructural changes. And so we've got recommendations under both of these reports about engaging immediately with key stakeholders, and that includes giving members of the public an opportunity, but also key stakeholder groups, such as the transport subgroup of the Herefordshire Climate and Nature Partnership Board, and of course the numerous local organisations, I won't name them all, but cycling groups and so forth, pedestrian representative groups, accessibility groups that I think could have really, really useful input on these matters. And then we did note some, you know, through detailed questioning, we did actually bottom out the fact that, for example, carbon emission calculations have been calculated using 2 different bases won't go into the technicalities, but territorial and consumption within the same report, which resulted in a sort of underplaying of some aspects. So I think greater clarification on that would be helpful. So I'm pleased to see this is for the administration to note, and that you'll provide an executive response, and we very much look forward to that. But in addition to the sort of executive response in 2 months, what we would really, really like to see is clear and rapid progress on that point of allowing residents and stakeholder groups to input on the detail of these, which means publication of the underlying documentation and invitation to input as soon as possible. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Chowns, and I agree that consulting with the public is always and interest groups is always a very important thing, and so we look to those recommendations with interest, and yes, we will be providing a response in due course, but just thank you to the Scrutiny Committee for giving such key issues and plans their attention. So the recommendation is for Cabinet members, you're content with to note the recommendations and for a response to be provided within 2 months. Yeah, all in agreement?
Yep.
Thank you very much. So that moves us on to agenda item 7. So this is the report to... Oh, sorry, Councillor Harvey.
Yes, Leader. The Scrutiny Management Board met yesterday and did actually consider the delivery plan, which is on your agenda for today. And there were some recommendations from the committee relating to the delivery plan.
Yes, my apologies.
How do you want to deal with that?
Yes, my apologies. My intention was when we come to the delivery plan, I'll give the floor to you there if you're all right with that.
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Yep, okay, thank you. It's just it wasn't set out in my agenda, but it was my intention to consult you when the delivery plan item came up. Thank you. So agenda item 7 is the report to seek the decision on the recommendation route to deliver registered residential children's home provision in county for children and young people between the ages of 11 and 18. And so I will hand over to Councillor Powell to introduce the item for Cabinet.
Okay, thank you, Leader. So, as the Leader said, the report seeks to secure a decision at Cabinet on the recommended route to deliver registered residential home provision in the county for children and young people aged 11 to 18 years. So more generally then, the Sufficiency Strategy 2023 to 28 highlights the current challenge in delivering sufficiency of all placement types within the county. This report for decision by Cabinet today is one specific aspect of a range of activities being undertaken to develop our placement sufficiency under that strategy. And some examples of elements of that work going forward include building relationship with providers who are already in operation in Herefordshire, but so that we can have an increasingly larger proportion of that available local capacity. Developing our fostering service so that over time we're able to place more of our children in care in our own fostering provision, and indeed reducing the numbers of children in care rather than building capacity to up the current levels. I would just like to pause there at that point and just acknowledge the amount of considered and hard and professional work that the officers have undertaken. There are just a few bullet points I've highlighted there, but there's been a considerable amount of work invested in by the officers to get to this particular position, and rebuilding that relationship with providers is a really good example of something that will bear fruit. So I wanted to acknowledge that. We will bring forward the options appraisal that the Cabinet have already asked for, and that was a question about whether Herefordshire as a local authority should re-enter the residential market ourselves, as a number of other authorities are considering doing. Just some context, there were reasons why most local authorities exited the market some time ago, and obviously those will be considered when that document comes forward. 83% of current national residential provision is in that private area. So we're confident that the numbers of our children in care will fall. There are already fewer Herefordshire children in our care now than there were at the start of the year. But we have seen a rise in unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, and so that's why I've consciously used the phrase Herefordshire children for this particular item. We've also seeing that our plans for reunification for other families are progressing, but the fact is that there will always be a number of children in our care at any given point in time that will require residential care rather than a family type home, for example fostering. And that is because of a level of behaviour dysregulation, trauma, or the acuity of their need. And we need a flexible range of options which might include both in-house and external provision. So this proposal seeks to identify how that provision will be met by procuring 4 beds across 2 sites for children aged 11 up until their 18th birthday. Experience tells us that these children and young people have a range of complex needs due to adverse experience in their earlier life, and it's expected that those children will not be able to manage in family-based foster care, and they will need a period of residential care to promote transition through to foster care, or indeed, if appropriate and safe to do so, return to the family network. There's been some detailed work done to explore the potential occupancy rates and matching, given that obviously the complexity of need means for individual children needs us to make sure that placements are safe for each of those children. So that's why the option being brought forward is the 2 by 2 bedded units. That's considered to be the most viable size to deliver occupancy at over 80%, and also importantly, the effective matching of children living in the home is essential. We also understand that whilst playing a significant role in achieving sufficiency and offering a quality of placement to meet need, the homes will only be needed for a small number of children and young people, and again that's why 4 is believed to be the right number. There are options to expand without further procurement, and they will be written into any agreement allowing for that expansion within the lifetime of the contract. I will just highlight to you some particular elements that have been explored. So the Assistant Director undertook a point-in-time review of young people in residential care and confirmed that there were opportunities to move young people into this new provision had it been available at that time, and that matching to achieve that minimum occupancy at 80% was also considered and found to be viable. Senior operational staff have committed to the delivery of robust oversight of care planning to reduce any avoidable vacancies, and importantly, an emphasis on good care planning and effective matching, and this will be routinely overseen by the Service Director for Safeguarding and Families and alongside contract monitoring. The specification will ensure that it is fit for purpose and that the identified preferred supplier can provide quality offer for children and young people with those complex needs without extensive additional requests or solo arrangements. And the working group who will undertake the procurement does include experienced colleagues across social care and including special educational need, child and adolescent mental health services, the Integrated Care Board, finance, commercial and legal services. The procurement will set a cap for inclusive weekly costs to avoid unexpected costs. Post-placement, and importantly, and I did reference this earlier, extensive market engagement has been undertaken and has been an indication from potential preferred suppliers of an appetite to work with Herefordshire, and indeed they appreciate the model and the ethos behind the model that is being suggested. So it is expected that we will see bids in line with the specification. That's my introduction to the paper. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Powell. Cabinet members, do you have any questions that you would like to raise on this item? Councillor Price.
Yeah, thank you for that report, Ivan. That was very, very interesting. You mentioned the difference between Herefordshire children and asylum and accompanied asylum seekers. Do I assume, and it's only an assumption, that any under 18 unassisted or asylum seeker goes straight into our care?
Councillor Price, yeah, I think you have to disengage your microphone.
Thanks, Councillor Price, for your question. The short answer to the question is yes. Of course, the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children group need very specific needs to meet their requirements, and indeed we are working across the Directorate specifically on that, following some recent feedback from the Inspector at Ofsted on that point.
Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Powell, for your introduction. This seems something that is a very excellent thing to be doing, bringing increasing provision within county, so that it's better for kids to be close to their family or close to networks, and it just seems like a very good step in the right direction. What I'm particularly intrigued by, though, is recommendation D, the opportunity to undertake work to consider options to develop an in-house provision to increase local sufficiency for some of these difficult cohorts of high dependency, high needs, social, emotional, mental health need young people. Do we have a sense of the timeline on that, or where that might go?
There is can't immediately go to it, but there is a paragraph. Thanks for the question. There is a paragraph in there detailing the commitment for that piece of work to be done, and the bring forward intention is to complete that piece of work within 6 months. And we do have the opportunity to talk to some other areas who are already considering this. So we do come forward with a very considered response to that.
Okay, Councillor Biggs.
Thank you, Leader. First of all, I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but it's early days for me in council still, but I'd just like to welcome Ivan back and think that the way that was introduced and the detail and the knowledge that Ivan has is great. It's just great to have him back in Cabinet, firstly. Secondly, just on scalability, because I notice it's 4 and that's excellent that we're doing that. But is there an element of scalability to this if we're achieving the 80% or beyond that? Is there something we can look at down the track to scale it?
Thanks for your welcome back. It's appreciated. So the short answer is yes, of course we can. That work is already ongoing within the much broader piece of work around the whole sufficiency placement strategy. But yes is the short answer.
Thank you. Councillor Bramer.
Thank you, Chairman. It seems that everything goes in cycles, and it doesn't seem to be very many years ago that councils were looking for private sector care providers, and everybody was jumping on the then bandwagon. I'm not surprised in the least that we're looking to get back into our own provision. Obviously, it's much more easy to control, I would think, rather than having a third party involved in the care of these young people. Clearly there are reports of various kinds that come out from government from time to time. I just really want, the question really would be to ask, is the mood of the nation that in 20 years' time or 10 years' time or 5 years' time that all councils will be back under their own steam, or is it just something that seems to be happening just at this current time?
Thanks for the question. So just an overarching observation initially, and then to answer the specific question. Government commissioned an independent review of children's social care. It was conducted by Josh McAllister and published in May 2022, I think. He made reference to a particular report conducted by the Competition and Markets Authority at the same time. And there was some commentary in there about, in effect, both the cost of private provision, but also there have been a number of fairly recent national reports about the quality of some of that provision, and Children's Services and the Safeguarding Partnership locally consider the content of those reports to review, you know, what's the current position in Herefordshire, and are we happy with the quality of our provision against that national learning. So the government response currently hasn't said much about the particular recommendations from both Mr McAllister's review and the Competition and Markets Authority, but they are in the process of publishing a revised working together document which is due out any time now, and I think that's been the focus of what they've been doing. In particular, because a significant contribution to that national report was a national panel report into the deaths of Arthur Lavinia, Hughes and Star Hobson. So there's been necessarily a significant amount of focus on that. National context, to answer the specific question about the mood, there is not really a national mood that you're suggesting, and it is very much down to each local authority area still to kind of decide what sufficiency placement strategies look like in each local area.
Thank you. I heartened to hear that we're perhaps ahead of the curve rather than following on behind it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other comments from Cabinet members at this stage, then the matter has not been raised with scrutiny. So unless Councillor Fagan had a comment, I would suggest that we go straight to group leaders for their comments. Councillor Matthews. Sorry, Councillor Matthews, can you press your microphone button? Please bear with us while we strive to fix it. No.
Well, I'd like... That now.
It comes on its own. It comes on its own.
Thank you very much, Councillor Matthews. We're just checking that your microphone is actually recording. 'Cause is the light on at the base of the device? Right, okay. But right. Okay, right. So we'll get you another microphone, Councillor Matthews. Any other group leaders? Okay, Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. Mine is working, by the way. And like Councillor Matthews, can I welcome back Councillor Powell? He's looking surprisingly well. Last time I saw him, he was very well, and we're pleased to see him back. Can I say wholeheartedly welcome this particular option? And there are so many areas where this is the way forward, I feel. I've got a number of residential homes like this in my ward and across the border, especially across the border, where the children come from all over the country. And I just don't think it's the right way to do it. You know, it's a very costly provision, enormously costly, and people get the public get a shock when they realise how much per child we're spending on this sort of provision, and I'm afraid it is necessary. But the idea that we're sending them all backwards and forwards all over the county, all the costs of that, and the supervision and the ability to monitor how they're being cared for in those particular facilities is unacceptable, I think, as a national policy, let alone a local one. So I do welcome this. I think it's the way we're going forward. It's all very, you know, it's not about the private sector versus the public sector. It's the fact that it just doesn't work quite right in the private sector in large areas of the country. And, of course, we've had the various terrible instances of abuse and, well, deaths as a result of that in childcare throughout the country as a whole. And so I wholeheartedly welcome this.
Thank you, Councillor James.
Having said that, Chair, having seen it places apply to do this in the private sector in my community, you do get what I might call an uneducated opposition in some quarters when you propose to do something like this in any community. So I think it's important to realise that it's for the greater good that we need to do this in any community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Chans?
Welcome back, Ivan. I welcome this. I just want to clarify, Ivan, because I've been a little confused by some of the comments in response. I read the report as saying that we are commissioning a private sector organisation to provide us with accommodation for 4 young people over the next 5 years. Some people seem to have assumed it means that we're taking it back in-house. You're nodding. It's really clear. This is commissioning the private sector. Thank you. Do you want to just clarify that further?
It is, yeah. Thank you. So to clarify, yes, this is commissioning private provision for the 4 beds, but in a way that we have a view, importantly enables us to control the quality of that in a very detailed way. There is the broader discussion, which was kicked off by this paper earlier, which was about the exploration of in-house provision, if I can clumsily call it that.
Great, thanks. I think that's helpful. And I think that, the report makes it clear this is very expensive accommodation, but it is for young people who have particular needs, and that is crucial. And it's actually an opportunity, I think, this discussion for us to kind of reinforce once again in our communication to residents that, in fact, the large majority of what we all pay as council tax goes for social care, for example, including this type of social care. And that is indeed what tax is for us all to contribute to doing things that we collectively want to do to support some of the most vulnerable in our society. So You paid tribute to the work done by officers to, you know, explore all of the options. I share your kind of view that officers are working incredibly hard to try to drive down costs, and that this is a very expensive type of provision. In fact, I was at one of these types of homes really very recently, and understand that because of the ratio of staff required to look after the young people, it is a very an expensive form of provision, but needed for those young people. And I understand the paper makes very clear the rationale for two times 2 bed units. I think that makes a lot of sense. I would just make you can't go into it now, I don't think, but I think the question of the location of these properties is really important, and that really relates to the young people and the needs of those that are in them. I would expect that we might be looking for, you know, these properties to be used for particular young people for a long period of time, so that they have that stability of placement. And I think that there are real challenges and questions to be considered around, particularly around the benefits and limitations of rural isolation, essentially. So I'd just be great to have your assurance that that is being thought about very carefully. I was pleased to see that young people within the care system will be consulted on the specification for the units, because I think that is important to give young people as many opportunities as possible to have their voices heard. Thanks.
Thank you. And last but by no means least, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Leader. Ditto, Councillor Powell. Yeah, Independence for Herefordshire support this as an initiative. I think, you know, it looks like an awful lot of money in recommendation A, but of course these are not 2-bedroom properties. They will have to be considerably larger than that for a 2-child placement location, which I think maybe makes things a little clearer than referring to them as two-bedroomed. As Councillor James has already mentioned, we do have a lot of these sorts of facilities in Herefordshire, actually. But, you know, officers tell us that very few, if any of them, are used by this council, and that they are occupied by children from outside of the county who are being placed here for whatever reason. Is there any scope to revisit whatever the reasons are for us not using any of the many locations that we have in the county for children to be housed and looked after? It does seem a little odd that we do have a lot and we don't use any ourselves. And if we are going to be having these 2 premises commissioned and ring-fenced for our use, you know, what further could we do in negotiating placements that are ring-fenced for the council to use in these other facilities that already exist in Herefordshire? As far as recommendation D is concerned, I can assure you that we have been asking officers over the last 4 years to look at pursuing this alongside a similar question put to adults for getting back into this area of care provision. And nothing has progressed on it. It may well be a function of the condition that our children's services are at the moment, in that, you know, we need to make some more progress in terms of our own internal processes and service provision. But if there are concerns that officers have that will hold back us being able to make progress on delivering our own provision in the future, we really do need to understand what those are and get them addressed. If those are, you know, real concerns or whether they are perceptions, in order to be able to make progress on recommendation D in terms of getting back into the market ourselves. But in principle, very supportive.
Well, thank you very much to group leaders for your comments and your support on this really valuable provision. So the recommendation is set out in the report, recommendations A to D. I take it, Councillor Powell, you're recommending the approval?
I am, please.
Yes, and if I can have a seconder for the recommendation, Councillor Swinglehurst, all in favour? Okay, thank you, that's unanimous. Right, so we now go on to agenda item 8. Oh, sorry, Councillor Powell.
Just one quick point. Zoe Richards is in the room, so I want to obviously acknowledge the officers, but Zoe's been instrumental in leading the piece of work. So I wanted to acknowledge Zoe's work, but also just say, is it okay for Zoe to get on with a busy day now?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for your all of your hard work on this item. Thank you. Thank you. So now we go to agenda item 8, which is the Q2 budget report. And the item is to report the forecast position for 23-24's budget, including explanation and analysis of the drivers for the material budget variances, and outline current and planned recovery activity to reduce the forecast overspend. It's also to provide the assurance that progress has been made towards delivery of the agreed revenue budget and the service delivery targets, and that reasons for the major variances are understood and are being addressed to the Cabinet's satisfaction. And to talk us through the item is Councillor Stoddard. Over to you, Councillor Stoddard.
Thank you, Leader. This report is the second outturn position reported for financial year 2023-24 and further demonstrates the challenges that we are facing in delivering the revenue budget set by the previous administration in February of 2023. This year's approved revenue budget is £193.3 million, which includes planned savings of £20 million, comprising of £14.1 million of directorate savings, together with £5.9 million of central budget savings. This Q2 report forecasts an overspend of £13.8 million, which is an increase of £0.3 million from the £13.5 million forecast at Q1. This figure is before any management action and includes £6.8 million of directorate savings and £0.8 million of central savings, which are currently assessed as being at risk at Q2. The overspend represents a variance of 7% against budget, with the most significant forecasted overspend in children and young people of £11.8 million. I would like to reiterate that this overspend reflects significant pressures, including a challenging national and global economic environment, increased demand for adult and children's social care, and the soaring costs of transporting children with special needs to school. At the County Council Network Conference this week, it was clear to me in discussions with many other councils that the issues that we face with children's services, SEN and adult social care are not unique only to Herefordshire. Table 1 of the report shows the forecast revenue position before management recovery action. As part of the proactive measures to address the current year overspend, each directorate will implement additional expenditure controls to support existing recovery action in 23-24. Directorate panels will review expenditure on goods and services, as well as changes in staffing arrangements to provide increased rigour and challenge over expenditure for the remainder of the financial year. And this will include individual directors' approval for all items in excess of £500. These controls will continue as part of Directorate Financial Management as required in 24-25. These measures are expected to reduce the forecast overspend down to £10.5 million, as shown at Table 2. I would like to emphasise, however, that each directorate will be required to continue to identify further recovery action and options to mitigate at-risk savings targets. Corporate directors will continue to develop corporate recovery plans to manage in-year delivery of services within their approved budgets, as shown at Appendix D. As you will all know, Cabinet members are actively engaged with the respective corporate directors in achieving this, and Cabinet are fully committed to the delivery of savings in full and on time to ensure that the 2023-2024 outturn position is balanced and to prevent further pressures on future years' budgets. Internal financial reporting has further been strengthened to identify emerging pressures and key risks, and this enables active monitoring and review of financial performance against budget at monthly Cabinet feeder meetings. Council approved a total of £14.1 million of directorate savings for 23-24. A review of the delivery and status of the 2023-24 approved savings has been undertaken, informed by planned and actual activity in the year to date to determine savings targets at risk of in-year delivery. This review has confirmed that £7.3 million of savings forecast to be delivered this year, and identifies £6.8 million of the total target at risk of delivery as at Q2. Progress on the delivery of savings and mitigations will continue to be monitored and reported in the next budget monitoring report to Cabinet. I would also like to draw my Cabinet colleagues' attention to Appendix A, which details the key variances from budget for items in excess of £250,000 as at Q2 in respect to each of the directorates. Within community and wellbeing, I would highlight the £1.6 million of overspend in regards to physical support due to both cost and demand pressures in residential care, cost pressures in nursing care, and demand pressures in home care. In respect to children and young people, I would highlight the £4.5 million overspend, representing saving targets at risk, £3 million overspend in respect to agency staff, and £2 million overspend representing additional demands in Send Transport. Within economy and environment, a £1.3 million reduced income for development, planning and building control, and within corporate services, a £1.2 million overspend in the PMO arising due to staffing cost pressures. This Conservative-led administration is fully committed to reducing the in-year overspend to avoid future pressures, and as mentioned earlier, all Cabinet members are actively working with their corporate directors to achieve this, and this includes significant activities towards achieving a balanced revenue budget for 24-25. The approved 2023 capital budget of £143.3 million has been revised down to £89.7 million, as shown in table at para 11 of the report. The administration's amendment to the capital programme, which we'll be discussing later this afternoon, will be cost neutral and will have no impact on the approved budget. Appendix C of the report reports the Treasury management performance and shows that we have earned £1.925 million in interest from our deposits. Despite these significant challenges, and contrary to media reports, I would like to reiterate again that Herefordshire Council's financial position remains very stable. We have a robust governance framework and strong financial controls. Our reserves are above average for a unitary council, and we have low levels of borrowing. And I would also like to highlight that following approval at Audit and Governance Committee on the 24th of October, the Council's external auditors, Grant Thornton, have issued an unqualified opinion on the 2022-23 Statement of Accounts. In a year of continued challenges and significant backlogs in the audit sector, this unqualified opinion provides valuable external assurance on the accuracy and timeliness of the Council's financial reporting. Grant Thornton's independent auditor report confirms that the financial statements give a true and fair view of the financial position and performance of the authority for the year ended 31 March 23, with no material errors or adjustments identified. The report also confirms the appropriateness of the Council's accounting policies, estimates and financial statement disclosures. Excuse me. Herefordshire Council is the first unitary authority and the first member of the Society of County Treasurers, who comprise of 24 upper tier shire counties and 16 unitary councils in Hereford, in England, to achieve audit sign-off for 22-23. This significant achievement places Herefordshire Council in an elite group of less than 2% of 466 local authorities nationally to receive an audit opinion to date in 2022-23. And I'd like to commend Andrew Lovegrove on my left and Rachel Hart for the hard work that they have done to achieve this. I would now like to invite my Cabinet colleagues for questions and to endorse this report and its 5 recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddart, for that very comprehensive assessment of the financial situation for this year to date. Do I have any questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Stoddart. That was an excellent introduction. I don't have a question, but I just thought I would like to touch on the key variances referred to, the 1.3 million for development planning and building control, which you referenced but gave no further narrative to. So that is partly due to the deferment of fee uplift by the government. That's now coming in and will offset somewhat that figure. And we also must acknowledge that there's been a national downturn in development and housing. So we're not immune from that, and therefore the income target for the planning has not been met, although it hasn't actually been met for the last 5 years either. So this is by no means a unique year for that, but it does explain somewhat why that figure is there. It's a reduced income, it's not an overspend, and so therefore it's a different animal. We also have the specific problem with phosphates and the LUG, the so-called moratorium, which is impacting delivery of housing as well. So some of these things are temporary, some of them less so. The overall, that reduced income has been offset by net underspends elsewhere in the Directorate. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Swinglehurst. Any more comments for now? No. Okay. Well, in that case, we will go to group leaders for their comments. Group leaders? No? Okay, I'll move on. Oh, no, sorry. Councillor Chance.
Isn't it? Thank you very much for the report, Councillor Stoddart. Thank you, Councillor Swinglehurst, for your clarification of the planning issue, because that was actually one of the questions that I had lined up. I mean, I'll get my political comment out right at the beginning, which is just that, Councillor Stoddart, it's really good to hear that you recognise how, well organised the finances of this council were in the previous financial year under the previous administration, and it's just a shame that that messaging wasn't what you were putting out 6 months ago. But I'm really glad that the Conservatives are recognising now that this council was well managed financially under the previous administration. Turning to the current year, what I'm a little worried about is that the figures haven't moved at all, really, in the last quarter. Well, they've moved slightly upwards in the wrong direction in the last quarter, and that is a little worrying. For what it's worth, I'm sure you're working really hard, Councillor Stoddart, to try and address this along with colleagues and officers. A couple of really specific things that sort of stood out at me. So on page 88, where we're looking at the breakdown of what the issues are, so that's the page that's looking at children and young people. A few things really kind of jump out from that page. So one is that we've got a really large underspend in the improvement line, more than £2.5 million underspend this year in the improvement line. whereas we've got 2.5 million overspend in additional needs. We've got forecast overspend and forecast underspend. 8 million, forecast overspend in looked after children and so forth. And we know that there are, these rising costs that are to a significant extent out of the control of the council in terms of the costs of providing those services. But what really worries me is that we're not spending as much as we'd intended to on improvement. And I think it would be really helpful to clarify why there is that significant underspend on that, projected underspend on that budget line. Is it the work is being done elsewhere and sort of just counted under another budget line? Or is it the case that we are working so hard to kind of deal with the immediate priorities of costs going through the roof for care that we're not being able to invest as we had hoped and intended to in the long-term changes that are necessary to drive our improvement journey? Just also in terms of clarity, I think we've got the list, and you went through it verbally, underneath the figures in red, including 4.5 million overspend representing savings targets at risk, 3 on agency staff, 2 on Send Transport. I think it would be really helpful to clarify the savings at risk. What is that actually? How does that break down? How much of that is agency, anticipated savings on agency staff that we're not able to deliver? Because it might be that actually we've got £6 million of projected overspend that is attributable to agency staff. That's unattainable savings at risk, or savings at risk is not a terribly clear way of presenting that. So that's on the children's side, which raises concerns for me. Page 89, the next page, where we're looking at corporate services. I'm really quite concerned to see there's a projected £1 million overspend on the Thrive Transformation Programme in this year, along with a 1.2 million overspend on the Project Management Office. Now, both of those appear to be under the last line in the table above that, transformation, PMO and performance. So the original budget for both of those things was only £3 million anyway. So we've got a massive, in percentage terms, an absolutely enormous overspend. So I'd really quite like to know, what was the original budget for Thrive Transformation, upon which we've got a £1 million overspend? Is that, has spending doubled on that thing? And why? Because surely our transformation programmes are supposed to be saving us money, not getting massively overspent themselves very early on in the delivery. So for me, there's a real I know it's not a scrutiny meeting, but those are real, serious issues, I think, in the detail that kind of jump out. I'm going to save my comments on various items in the capital table because we're going to talk about the capital budget later on. But I think that there are a couple of things that are mentioned in this. So on page 92, in fact, they're both on page 92. So the second line down, kind of under the, it's under the IT Services Partnership Board, the Capital Development Fund, the Capital Project Development Fund. This is something that was put in place under our administration to help with the cost of developing projects to the point where they were, they could be pitched as getting towards being shovel ready at least, and we've never managed to unlock it. And it's just a plea. I kept making this in Cabinet and I'll keep making it out. It's so important to be able to find that way as a council of investing in developing the kind of the initial work required for a project to be able then to bid for grants. That's what that was supposed to be. It's a real shame that no projects have ever been internally approved to use that funding. Is there a way to unlock that, please? And my last comment or question, also on the same page near the bottom, my account. So phase 1 has been completed under budget, so there's an underspend on that because things have been done more cheaply than anticipated, it seems. That's great, but from a user perspective, I'm afraid my account is not working well in certain respects. If you log a highways error, it logs it 1 second later as completed on my account. So it's not usable for the user as a means of tracking your interactions when dealing with highways complaints. And I've talked to officers about this. There is some problem in that IT system, so it's definitely not a completed project. So perhaps that underspend could be spent on actually fixing those presenting problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Challenge, and we'll pick those questions up in our debate after other group leaders have had their say. Councillor James?
Thank you. A problem in IT? Surely not. We're forever having problems in IT, I'm afraid. But there were on the just on table 1 and table 2. Whilst we welcome the improvements in the overspend figure, but it's still substantially. What I think I would like, and I think the public would like, is to identify what effects those particular savings will have on the delivery of services and the services provided for the residents of this county. That's, to be frank, that's what the public are most interested in. Is this going to have an effect, and what effect is it going to have on the services they expect in the county? Further than that, I mean, it's a sad situation that we're in and facing the revenue budget coming next year. We can always pray, I suppose, but I'd like in future to have more information about what effect and where specifically those savings are being made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Any other group leaders? Councillor Harvey?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yeah, nearly 14 million overspent this year. That's huge, isn't it? And management action taking it down to 10.5 by the end of the year. There's not a lot of the year left, so you know that is a big ask. I'm grateful that there's some information in the Q2 report indicating progress being made in year in terms of taking that management action. But it's looking like progress is slow on that, and getting some assurance that the kind of savings that you're hoping to make in year to offset some of these really big numbers are actually going to be delivered in what remains of the year would be good. I note from the response that was received to Councillor Crockett's written question that the £4 million for all age social care transformation that was in the budget has been wrapped into base budget figures that are now being presented in both adults and children's. So it looks, in terms of the way that question's been answered, when referring back to the information that was in the budget that was approved by full council in February this year, that money is being used to offset overspends and pressures in those service areas, rather than delivering the preventative and improvement programmes that the money was originally conceived as being spent delivering. So I'd welcome a bit of clarity on that, whether the urgency of the overspends now is overriding the investment that was intended to try and prevent pressures in the future. It's really disappointing that when you look at the savings that were approved and agreed to be built into the budget, that not one single element of the savings that were committed to in the Children's Directorate have been made. You know, nothing at all. And I'm really disappointed about that, because I know, having been part of the Cabinet at the time, how much effort and challenge we went into during the budget development process to say, look, are these really achievable? Can you actually do this? We're really looking to understand when we can expect to see some of the downstream savings starting to appear for the improvement programme and the investment that's being made in doing things differently in children's. But, you know, it really, officers, you know, are you able to deliver these? And to see absolutely nothing coming forward from the entirety of that savings programme in the Children's Directorate, you know, I mean, actually, I feel for you guys, because I mean, were we in your seats now, you know, I'd be feeling really let down and disappointed, given the amount of opportunity that was presented during the budgeting process for people to, you know, say what they felt was deliverable and what wasn't. So, you know, I'm glad that there is a task and finish group that Scrutiny Management Board is going to run, looking at the in-year operation of the children's budget and the preparation for the budget for next year. And I really hope that we can work with you guys to try and make sure that there is much, you know, firmer confidence that we can get some delivery on savings that are signed up to. For me, it's a mystery that the Directorate seems to be really good at forecasting its overspends from, you know, sort of accounting period 1, let alone quarter 1. But it doesn't seem to be, it seems to struggle when it comes to forecasting what it can deliver in savings through the budgeting process. So, you know, whatever we can do to help on that in terms of putting a strong budget together for next year, I'm really happy to be involved in that. It's also a bit disappointing that there hasn't been any progress made in realising the new income streams that were identified as being capable of coming forward from trading services in economy and place. And I really hope that, you know, the income that there is the potential to deliver is, you know, going to be able to be realised as part of the budget for the coming year. Good to hear that the accounts have been signed off. We went to an awful lot of trouble to put in place processes to significantly tighten up on practices that we inherited in 2019. So I do hope that those ways of working, particularly when it comes to putting business cases together and managing projects properly, and, you know, putting a project management culture into more widely than just the project management office, but throughout the way that services are transformed and delivered in the directorates can be continued, because it really can make a difference. I see that there's a recommendation that Scrutiny Management Board picks up and takes a look in detail at quarter 2 and the in-year delivery figures. I'm happy to do our best on that, but we're struggling to find time in the schedule to be able to undertake that work, and so any assistance that you can provide in terms of helping to find space and officer support to enable that to happen would be appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey, for those comments and your offer of help, which is much appreciated. Councillor Matthews.
Very briefly, Chairman, I agree with Councillor James. I hope we can become a more efficient value for money authority, and that there's not too much impact on the hard struggling members of the public out there, and that measures are taken to implement the costs on them and not dealing with them and dealing with them within house. So we're monitoring this very carefully, and from what I've heard, you know, you seem to be giving the impression that you can deal with it. I sincerely hope that you can. As I said, I don't want to see service charges for everything put up and the impacts on the hard-pressed public, and that we've got to deal with these issues within house and become a more efficient and value for money authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Just pause for a clarification for the meeting. Councillor Hercombe, sorry. Were you in the meeting room when I asked for declarations of interests? No. So can I just ask, have you any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interests in the proceedings of this meeting? Thank you for that clarification. Technical point, but an important one. Thank you. Right, okay, so Cabinets, you've heard the views of group leaders, and we had some queries and questions from Councillor Chowns about are we spending enough money on improvement? So that's I'd really be interested in Cabinet members' views on that. And is there enough clarity on the savings that are at risk? We've also had a concern about the cost of Thrive transformation and what was the original budget for Thrive, and the budget item on developing of projects, is that money being spent? And I think we don't need to debate it now, but there's a scepticism about my account and is it working properly? So I think we'll take that issue out of the room, but it's noted. So there's the clarification on those would be helpful, and I think that Councillor James's general point about clarification on what the impact of the savings will have, I think is something we should be very mindful of and clarify that at all times. And there's a couple of comments from Councillor Harvey, but we had a direct question about spending enough on improvement. Councillor Powell, could you tell Cabinet your thoughts in the room?
I will, thanks. If I might, there were a few points I think that both Councillor Chowns and Councillor Harvey made, and I'll just pick them up in one go if that's okay. So very specifically about the planned savings, it was projected £2 million worth of savings on placements and £2 million worth of savings on staff. 2.5, sorry, on staff. The reality is that we've seen a lack of response from the market in terms of being able to recruit as quickly as we would have liked to have achieved those savings. As it happens, we've seen starting to see some shift now in the last couple of months, but that's put those particular savings at risk. I should have added right at the start, actually. Scrutiny Management Board and the task and finish has been referenced, as Councillor Stoddart also indicated the very detailed discussions which are taking place in the Directorate financial discussions, which are happening almost immediately. The first for Children's Services is on Tuesday of next week. So much of that discussion will obviously take place there. But so those particular savings were at risk because we've not been able to recruit at the rate that was anticipated. The placement budgets have actually been managed very robustly and very well this year, but still have not been able to achieve those savings that were set. In terms of the very specific question about finance on the improvement work, there are a few issues in there, but a couple of the bigger headlines are that there was an intention to recruit staff with particular skills in that work, and we weren't able to do so. But also, in-house and within the improvement work more generally, we found other ways of delivering the work. And I think it's important to say and reflect that the improvement work is overseen under the governance of the Children's Improvement Board. So it's not a case of there's been no improvement because we've not spent the budget. That's absolutely not the case. Children's Improvement Board was yesterday. That, as you would expect, there is a robust supporting action plan for the activity that sits on the improvement work. Much of the improvement activity is now identified as being embedded in business as usual work of the Directorate. It's too early to say that we are able to acknowledge the impact, but what we absolutely are monitoring is the outcomes that we expect, and that is the improved experience as a consequence of that improvement work for children and families. And there's to be a revision, agreed yesterday at the board, there is to be a revision of that action plan in January 2024. And there was also, forgive me, I can't remember whether it was Councillor Harvey or Chowns, my apologies. It was Councillor Harvey, thanks. A question about some of that investment in prevention activity. There was investment in what I would describe as pump priming activity, focused on making sure that we got some traction in early help, obviously early help being that place that stops things escalating in families and for individual children, which may warrant them becoming with an intervention need higher up the scale, as it were. So a range of, I guess, headline responses to some of the points, but acknowledging a need to take some of that other detailed discussion into the Directorate discussions that Peter has indicated, and also Scrutiny Management Board task and finish.
Thank you very much, Councillor Powell. So Councillor Harvey mentioned the all ages money, and is the challenge is it being spent on overspends rather than on developing the services? Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you, Leader. I can say that the all ages social care funding has been used to support social care. So yes, it is. It's included in the base budgets.
And in response to Councillor Harvey's, there is a difficulty with the timing of the meetings with scrutiny, and it seems like we're going to end up packing in quite a lot into quite a short space of time. But I welcome that the willingness to try and have those scrutiny meetings so we can work through this and really get to the nub of the question that's been raised, is that can these savings that are forecast be delivered so that we can approve that budget in February with the confidence that it's a working budget that can be achieved. So I take that point on board. Okay, thank you. Oh, Councillor Stoddart, sorry.
Thank you, Leader. And I'd like to just address Councillor Chown's point about the Thrive programme. We will provide a full written response to that question.
Okay then, right. Well, we have 5 recommendations for this item. It's proposed by Councillor Stoddart, and do we have a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Durkin, thank you very much. All in favour of the proposals? Thank you. Right, we move on to agenda item 9, which is the delivery plan for 2023-24, and the item is to approve the proposals for the delivery plan for that year. Each year, Cabinet is required to produce a delivery plan which sets out how the strategic ambitions for the year will be achieved. The item is on page 115 of the agenda pack. And I would like to hand over to Councillor Stoddart to introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Each year, the Council is required to produce a delivery plan which sets out how its strategic ambitions will be achieved for that year. This delivery plan in front of you is derived from the County Plan 2020-24, which together with the medium-term financial strategy provides the overarching framework within which decisions are taken and resources are allocated to meet the ambitions of the plan. The existing county plan was approved by full council on the 14th of February 2020 and sets out the key strategic ambitions for the county, measures of success and deliverables as developed by the previous administration. Following the election in May and the change in administration, the Cabinet has reviewed the current county plan and deliverables, and as part of this review, a process was undertaken to consider whether they should continue to meet the expected outcomes, and where appropriate, we have included new deliverables to meet the county plan's aims and objectives. The delivery plan for 23-24, which is Appendix A to the report, identifies the key programmes of work that this administration will progress during 2023-24 under the three ambitions of the current county plan: economy, community and environment. Each of these projects and deliverables contributes to one or more objectives as set out in the county plan. And this delivery plan includes a continuation of some key deliverables of note, which include improvement of children's services, river quality, securing a partnership approach to achieve river restoration, waste strategy, moving further up the waste hierarchy, development of a new library and museum, delivery of the Hereford Transport Strategy and the City Centre Master Plan, employment land, development putting first phases of employment sites, and then lastly, investment in infrastructure. We will measure success as laid out in the delivery plan, which focuses on the key transformation pieces of work for the council. Underpinning the delivery plan is the requirement that all council services are required to produce service business plans, which will include a range of additional service improvements which will be undertaken during the 2023-24 year. This delivery plan will form the basis of performance reporting into the corporate leadership team on a monthly basis and to the Cabinet quarterly, alongside financial and risk reporting. The following objectives will continue to be monitored within operational services: delivering schools investment programme, which supports objective CO1, school improvement to support young people to learn, which supports objective CO1, management of the council's assets to maximise their use, supporting objective CO0, delivery of broadband coverage via FasterShare whilst addressing the barriers for people going online, which supports objective EC4, and finally supporting the tourism and cultural sector of the county across the county, supporting objective EC5. The new county plan for the next 4-year period is in development and will reflect the aims and the ambitions of the council. It will focus on improving the county's infrastructure, protecting the environment and putting the needs of our residents first. All individual projects within the delivery plan will be subject to individual decisions and appropriate governance decision-making processes, meaning that the environment, equality and financial aspects and requirements will be considered as part of the process. This week's Scrutiny Management Board has recommended that we format the current delivery plan to make it easier to identify specific items. Secondly, that a closure report for the current county plan and this year's delivery plan, including what has been achieved, will be produced. And finally, that we realign the timeline for the County Plan 24-28 and Delivery Plan 24-25 to full council on the 8th of March 2024. The recommendations of this report have no direct financial implication. All financial approvals will be made via the appropriate governance routes as part of the individual projects. There are no direct legal implications arising from the recommendations set out in this report. And in conclusion, the County Plan 2024 and this associated delivery plan are integral elements of the Council's performance management framework. Risks associated with the objectives and projects are entered into the relevant project and or service risk registers and are escalated as appropriate. And in conclusion, I would like to invite my Cabinet colleagues to endorse this report and its single recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddart. Are there any comments from Cabinet members? Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just pick up on the point, because I was also in that scrutiny meeting, and I think there is an issue around levels of detail and where that comes in, and benchmarking, you know, what we've delivered, when we've delivered it, and to what point. Where that needs to sit, whatever, but it has to be somewhere, whether that's a year-end, end of term report, if you like, or as part of the the delivery plan. But it kind of makes sense with the timing of things as it is. Probably the county plan, sort of as an end of term report, would make sense. But either way, it has to be somewhere.
Yes, Councillor Swinburne, quite agree. I thought I'd picked up on that point correctly, but what we're aiming to produce is a closure on the county plan with the specifics in the delivery plan addressed, explained what has been achieved, what hasn't been achieved, and what level it has been achieved to.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments from Cabinet members? If not, as has been said, this matter went before the Scrutiny Management Board on the 21st of November, chaired by Councillor Harvey. So, Councillor Harvey, did you have any further comments?
Thank you, Leader. Well, I thank the Cabinet member for accepting the recommendations from Scrutiny a couple of days ago, and for considering the comments that were made during the meeting regarding the content of the delivery plan. I think, given where we are in the year, there isn't a great deal of point in trying to press for the improvements to be made to this plan, but I accept that the Cabinet member was gracious enough to say that those comments would be considered and taken on board in terms of developing the county plan for the next 4 years, and how the delivery plan for the first year of that county plan would be constructed, and metrics and key performance indicators identified associated with the deliverables for the first year. So thank you for that. Also, it's good that that you're accepting that there is some a working group to walk alongside the development of that county plan. I think it will be good for all members of the council to have the opportunity to make an input to the plan while it remains plastic and capable of being influenced, and hopefully we'll end up with a better plan as a result of being able to make those inputs. It's a bit of a shame that, seeing as this was pretty much an open goal in terms of saying what you've already done and writing it into the plan, that we didn't see more of that in the way that the plan has been constructed, and also in terms of the consultation, which is acknowledged in the report before you. That the requests that were made when the political group consultation was undertaken for a bit more detail to be in there about what wasn't being pursued any longer, that's in the county plan, that wasn't made clear. I think that's an omission, but hopefully, seeing as you've agreed to have a closure report for the 4-year county plan, that we can sweep those things up and, just from a point of view of transparency, make it clear to the public what's continuing and what is being left by the wayside.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. And as group leader, did you want to make a comment, or have you said all the things that you needed to say?
I'm not going to say any more.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I'll move to other group leaders if they wish to speak. Councillor Chowns.
Thanks. Yes, thanks, Councillor Stoddart. We did go through this in a lot of detail on Tuesday. Don't want to relitigate all of that. I suppose for me, the points that I was making, which, sorry, Councillor Matthews, I can't see you three. Brilliant. It's nice to be able to see Councillor Stoddart down that table. The points that I was making on Tuesday, which were about presentation, they're not just kind of presentational, they're actually about structuring and about ensuring that the delivery plan connects to the broader strategic plan, so we're making sure we're tracking everything through. And what you've said you'll do is a report on sort of what's been done so far, kind of a closure report, and hopefully take that forward into doing the next county plan, which is great. I just think it's a bit of a shame that this document, which is kind of ticking a box at this point in the year, really, but it's a bit of a shame that the scrutiny process was only 2 days before the point at which it's going to be approved. So none of the useful commentary that was given at that point is actually being taken into account in this at all. And these documents do matter because this is what you're going to be reporting back against for the remaining 6 months of the year. So, you know, if there is any way to take those points into account with this document as it goes forward, specifically to ensure that you are actually taking on action on all of the elements of the previous county plan as per the delivery plans that we did previously, really highlighted those connections. I think that would be really helpful because it's not just a paper exercise, it actually shapes all of the framework that is used by officers for reporting on actions. So these documents kind of, you know, they do matter a bit. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Chance. Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, what concerns me, Chairman, is for the last 20 years, we've been scrutinising this and scrutinising that and still not solving the main issues, in particular with children's services. To me, it makes you wonder why all these costly committees are going on, and a lot of people who are chairing them now, I'm not saying that they're very dedicated and they work very hard, but they've been in administration and they've failed to deal with these weaknesses then, and the weaknesses are still going on. I respectfully suggest, colleagues, that the weaknesses are in the department themselves. The department, the director and his staff are the people who are qualified and specialise in that particular issue, and that's where the ideas and improvements and recommendations should come from to address them. Because if they're not addressed at the root of the tree, we're never going to get anywhere. So sorry, Darrell, to pile it onto you again. I seem to make a habit of doing it. I know, I'm sorry. But having said that, it's pointless having these scrutiny, costly committees going on year after year after year, and at the same time, Ofsted coming back to us and say, bum, 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 bum. The same issues are still there, and we still haven't solved them. It's not just since you've been there. As I said, it's been going on for many, many years. So it's high time that we took, I don't know how, Darrell, I'm sure, but somewhere with you and your staff, it's got to be made aware that they're just not getting to the bottom of the weaknesses that the Ofsted are raising. Until they do and address them, we're never going to solve these problems. And all we're doing is spending more and more money on scrutiny committees year after year after year, but not really dealing with the issues that are there. I know we've discussed it, I've discussed it with Paul, that, it's been going on for far too long now, and I respectfully suggest that if the root of the tree isn't in a healthy state and dealing with the flaws and the shortcomings and weaknesses, we're not going to solve it. So I'm afraid it's over to you, and that's where the recommendations and improvements have got to come from. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Matthews, I'll come back to that point in a minute, but Councillor Harvey, sorry, you forgot to mention something.
I did. I'm sorry. Thank you for letting me come back on this. It struck me when we were having a look at the Q2 report that there was an appendix that has normally been part of the quarterly performance reports that was missing from this Q2 report, which was Appendix E, the delivery plan dashboards. You did actually have that appendix for Q1, and it may be because you've got the delivery plan for this year coming to this meeting. But in terms of the remainder of this year, presumably there will be an Appendix E with some dashboard reporting against the delivery plan now that you've got it for Q3 and Q4 of this financial year.
Okay. Right, okay. We'll sit on that thought, but Councillor James, I'm conscious that did you want to make, or are you going to hold your peace?
I was missing for most of the report on this particular item. Just to say, I think we've got to look at everything in the future, the way in which the council is structured, how we manage our affairs as a political body and as a management body within the council. We've got to look at our management structures within the council. We can't go on like we are with the amount of management we have. You know, we probably, if in the old days, the audit commission would have been doing their occasional reports on the management structures and the efficiency of the council. I don't think we would do very well at the current. We've sort of built up larger and larger management within the county, and we're not going to be able to afford it in the future.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Councillor Stoddart, you wanted to make a point?
Thank you, Leader. To pick up on Councillor Harvey's point about the Appendix E, what we will be doing is a political consultation group for the 7th of December, 11th of December, where we'll look at the performance report, and that will be exactly that point that you were saying was missing, will be in that discussion, and there'll then be a separate report.
Just to make a point, whilst I respect the views of group leaders, it'd be helpful if we talk about the delivery plan rather than put specific officers under scrutiny that don't really have a right of reply. So if we could refrain from doing that. But since the delivery of outcomes was mentioned with regard to children's services, I don't know if Councillor Powell, you wanted to mention something?
I will, please. Yes, thanks. So it's been acknowledged that I've not been, I was away from my role for a few weeks, so I've not had the opportunity to catch up with Councillor Matthews in the way I normally would. So there's been a bit of a gap there. And you're right, Councillor Matthews, to reflect the sort of the challenge for children's services has been over many years. And I suppose what you could say, the genuine start of the improvement journey was, a year or so ago, particularly kicked off by the original Ofsted inspection. So Ofsted have been back for 3 visits. The headlines of those have been briefed. There are elements of improvement that have been reported across a range of areas, but we still acknowledge that there is much to do, and there is some commentary, and believe me, I'm trying to get under the detail of what is actually meant by it. The commentary about the pace of change. So we need to understand what actual pace are we referring to, and if it is a particular pace that we're not achieving, what are the blockers and the barriers to that? So there's some detailed discussion going on there. I've referenced the work of the Children's Improvement Board. There is a significant amount of work in the action plan. There is a significant amount of scrutiny about the pace of that work and the quality of that work. And I think it's important to recognise that much of the improvement activity is now in what is called the business as usual activity of the department, but inevitably it will take some time for us to see the impacts and the improved outcomes for children and families. Just to pick I'd give a balanced overview. So Ofsted's view of the children with disabilities team was very positive. It reported on that and some particular direct work. Yesterday at the Improvement Board, we heard the direct experience from a number of care leavers, and their opportunity was for them to talk to us about things that they found positive and things that they found challenging, and it was very balanced. But I think it is appropriate to report that they all consistently remarked how positive they were, with their relationship with their personal assistants, and they gave us some systems challenges. Just to pick one example, something about the administration of financial payments. So there's much work to be done. Absolutely, there are a number of areas which have been acknowledged by Ofsted as important. The Children's Commissioner has also produced a report which at some stage will be published, and that of course is under the scrutiny of the department too. I think what is there are a range of things in that Children's Commissioner which are important, but for the context of the challenge that you've posed, Councillor Matthews, the Children's Commissioner's recommendation to government is that children's services stay within the local authority. So that recognises, you know, the progress that's been made since she was appointed. So some headlines there, but you know, very happy and important that we have a conversation offline, I think.
Okay, thank you very much for those comments from group leaders and cabinet members. And we will move swiftly on yeah, okay. We'll move swiftly on to the recommendations set out by the report. Councillor Stoddard, you're happy to propose, and the seconder. Yep. Oh, Councillor Swinglehurst, all in favour? Right. Okay. And before we go on to the next item on the agenda, can I just call for a 5-minute break? Thank you very much. So can we have the live stream be commenced. Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing that short break, and we will now resume with the Cabinet meeting and resume at item number 10, which is the Capital Programme Review update. This is to recommend to Council for approval the revised capital proposals and proposed capital investment budget for 2023-24 onwards. The item is on page 131 of the agenda pack. Councillor Stoddard, could you introduce the item?
Thank you, Leader, for the third and final time this afternoon. Thank you, colleagues. I'm pleased today, in fact, I'm very pleased today to propose this revised capital programme to Cabinet today, as I believe strongly that it shows this administration's focus on addressing the issues that matter to the people of Herefordshire. The capital programme was approved by Council in February 2023, and Cabinet on the 5th of October proposed a revised capital programme which affected approximately 10% of the total budget. Following discussions with Council colleagues over a number of recent weeks, this report in front of you today is to revise these proposals for in-year changes to the approved programme. I'm very pleased this afternoon to confirm the inclusion of £2 million for a community grant scheme in the revised capital programme. The aim of this funding will be to enhance and support our investment in top community hubs in line with our original objectives for top community. That means we'll be looking to support bids that will help reduce and defer the need for formal health and social care support, and enable people with existing support needs to stay independent and living at home for as long as possible. The detailed criteria for the scheme will be determined taking account of the findings of the current strategic review of the top community. It is important to note, however, that this is capital investment only, and applicants will need to demonstrate a robust and sustainable revenue plan. This community grant scheme is funded by reducing the £12.3 million previously proposed for the Sutherland Link Road by a corresponding £2 million to £10.3 million. Correspondingly, Appendix A has been updated for the revised changes, and Appendix C includes these amendments into the revised capital programme to be recommended to Council. Furthermore, I can also confirm that outlined strategic business cases for all of the items will form part of the pack, which will be issued prior to full council on the 8th of December. At this week's County Council Network Convention, the respected government financial expert Paul Johnson CBE stated that house building and infrastructure are critical for growth. And this capital programme supports this, and it will be central to what this administration will do in delivering growth for Herefordshire. I therefore strongly recommend the revised capital programme and its single recommendation to my Cabinet colleagues.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stoddart, for the third time this afternoon. Cabinet colleagues, do you have any comments about the proposed amendments to the capital plan? No? Okay. I've thought long and hard about it. Okay. And if we just go to group leaders for their comments. Councillor Harvey, I think you were first.
Thank you, Leader. When I saw this come up on the published agenda for this meeting, it did have me scratching my head a little bit, given that you had only last month made adjustments to the in-year capital programme. But looking at it in a bit more, and particularly given the argument that you made for removing the Talk Community Hubs line was that there weren't any detailed plans for how that money was going to be taken forward. And now we seem to be playing the okey cokey with that 2 million by sticking it back in again now. Again, with no more detailed plans than, was the case for the hub money, because it had gone out to consultation and, a call for expressions of interest had been made and was being responded to by groups in the community when you pulled the rug out from underneath them financially. So I thought, what is going on here? Alongside that, your proposal to take to find that money by amending the line that you're inserting for the Southern Link Road project, without there having been any outline business case put forward as to why the figures that you came up with back in October were the right numbers for that project, was also a little bit startling. But then I reminded myself that Councillor Price is on record as saying that road scheme finances are really only ever a stab in the dark. So clearly we have the continuation of famously cavalier attitudes towards road scheme finances. You know, I wonder when we are going to see even an outline business case to justify the kind of figures that are being put in the capital programme now. Maybe we can look forward to them with the capital programme coming forward to Cabinet next month for the budget. But I hear that it's important that this change is made, and made now, ahead of the next council meeting, because actually this change buys votes in the room in order to actually get some votes across the line from other councillor groups sitting in opposition. So in a sense it doesn't surprise me, but it just seems that if you are going to do this sort of thing, it would be good if you did your best to not contradict the arguments that you've already made for why you take certain projects out of the capital programme in the first place. Otherwise, it's just a little bit insulting.
Thank you for those comments. I think it was Councillor Chowns was next.
Thank you. I welcome the fact that the points that I made at the last Cabinet meeting, where your proposed capital budget changes were considered and then withdrawn from the subsequent council meeting. So the points that I made there are critiquing the proposed removal of the £2 million for the Talk community investment. I'm really pleased that you've reflected on those comments and that you've actually recognised that that funding is needed by the community, and I'm pleased and want to pay tribute to the action of the community groups themselves, who I know were lobbying hard on this matter, because your original proposal to remove that funding line with nothing in its place was incomprehensible to anybody who recognises the value of the community sector in Herefordshire. I was at the Herefordshire Community Partnership meeting yesterday, and I'm sure that the voluntary and community organisations that participate in that partnership will be very pleased that this line is being reinstated, although I don't really understand why it's been renamed rather than just you've clearly acknowledged that it's needed. Having set a precedent for reducing the slush fund for the SLR to put the 2 million back into the community hubs, I'd like to invite you to extend and build on that precedent by doing the same to fund the proposed retrofit hub. Councillor Stoddart, you started your introduction by saying that you wanted to fund things that were important to the people of Herefordshire. Well, keeping warm is important to the people of Herefordshire. We're just about to go into another winter. It's unseasonably warm at the moment, but who knows what will happen. We've just heard today the energy price cap's gone up, so people's bills are going up. Investment in retrofitting people's houses is crucially important. Government has had its eye off this ball for years and years, and it's important that councils step into that breach insofar as we can. The very least we can do is invest in setting up the Herefordshire Retrofit Hub. The business case is there already. The plan is on the table. Lots of work has been done to develop this in the background. This is a project that is ready to go, for which you can continue to seek grant funding. So the removal of it from the capital budget, just on the basis that a grant hasn't yet been raised, is to my mind incomprehensible, given the importance of this investment. So I urge you in the strongest possible terms to do the same that you've done for the Talk Community Programme, to take £2 million out of the budget line that you've allocated for an as yet unclear purpose relating to the SLR, and put that back into the Retrofit Hub budget line. That will, deliver real value for people in Herefordshire in dealing with real issues, i.e. the cost of living. And thirdly, on the SLR, well, clearly the Greens aren't going to be able to support the allocation of £10+ million to what is no more than a line in the budget at this point. I've heard you say that there'll be I think you said a draft outline business case? An outline strategic business case. An outline strategic business case isn't very detailed, is it, Councillor Stoddart? I don't think it's sufficient to decide to spend more than £10 million on something. We need much, much more clarity about what you're proposing. And, fundamentally, I urge you to recognise that the solution to the investment challenges in Herefordshire is not to pour a large amount of money into the beginnings of a project about which we have no clue how much it would actually cost, nor whether it will have any cost benefit, and instead to invest in things like the retrofit project that we know have really, really high cost benefit ratios and a much more immediate result for people in this county.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews, did you have any comment?
Yeah, very briefly. You know very well, whenever highways come up, Councillor Price and I usually have a chat. I would like to ask him, please, or Councillor Stobbart, whichever. You've got the total scheme of 10,300 for the Southern Link Road. Can you tell me? Oh.
We just need it closer, sorry.
Can you tell me, please, what's the position over the eastern route now? There's no mention in here. Is that being progressed, or because you did promise that you'd look at all options? So can you tell us that has that been totally written out of the programme, or is that still in there for consideration?
Okay. Have you got any more comments, Councillor Matthews, or is that your? That's right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Well, there's a challenge to you, Councillor Price.
I thought earlier in the meeting that Councillor Harvey was been excellent in what she was talking about, and I was watching her with her wording on all of the things we've been discussing. I thought, great, we've got on side here. I don't like the fact that I'm famously cavalier because of stabs in the dark. Let me just suggest to you that in your administration, the cheap river crossing to the east has caused us a lot of concern, because it's 3 times the price that you thought it was. Is that not a stab in the dark, or is it just inflation? However,
those were figures we were provided with by consultants.
Sorry, thank you.
And
thank you.
any road
Harvey.
project.
Councillor Harvey, sorry.
I am
Councillor
answering
Harvey.
your question,
Councillor Harvey, please.
Harvey.
Sorry.
And as such, consultants are where we get all of our figures from for our estimates for roads, and procurement of these things come up with their own challenges from time to time. Anyway, I'm not going to dwell on that. I will talk about Councillor Matthews' Eastern River Crossing. We have seen the consultant's report on it. It's much more expensive than anticipated. It will be coming forward and being progressed along with the South Wide Link Road to see if there is a business case to be made for it. We will be having the conversation at Cabinet, I think, on the 21st of December, and you will be able to hear more then. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for those comments. I think I would just like to say about the community grants inclusion, I think it was an important initiative to ensure that we review the Talk Community initiative, and the rationale for withdrawing the money from this scheme from the capital programme was because that assessment of the Talk Communities initiative hadn't been done. But what seemed to be the problem with the whole thing is the mixing of the confusing supporting community groups through capital investment to help communities help themselves with the concept of super hubs. And it seemed right to be wanting to review the community hub process. And so that's why it didn't seem right to allocate funds for something before you'd done a review of it. But what came about that was absolutely clear, and clearer now, rather than conflating it with funding super hubs, is that there is a requirement for communities to be supported with capital initiatives. So that's why we are adjusting it to make it more clear about what the offer is and what the support would be for community groups if they are in any way able to deliver projects through capital investment that can help us with our greater initiative of making sure that people are supported in communities. So I think this brings greater clarity to how community groups can bid for funding and not get conflated with the necessity to create a super hub. So I think this brings more clarity about what we're intending to do to support communities. Okay, thank you. So those are all of the comments. Oh, Councillor Stoddart.
Chair, can I refer back to or respond back to Councillor Harvey's comments about the business case?
Yes, if you think it'll help the
I think it will.
Cabinet clarify their position.
Councillor Harvey's made me aware of the level of detail that she'd be expecting in business cases, so I've requested officers and I've had a look at now 5 business cases. They're basically built, they're 18 pages long and 17.5 pages are boilerplate, cut and paste, put information in. There's only meaningful information in the front piece. And that's what I've now spoken with officers to ensure that the outline strategic business case has meaningful information in it that will then enable all council members to read and understand what that project is about, what it will deliver, who it will deliver it for, what the cost estimate at the minute is, and how we're going to fund it. So it's a meaningful information to enable council members to vote as they see appropriate on the 8th of December.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Stoddart. So we have your proposal, and can we have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Durkin. Thank you very much. So the proposal is to approve the revised capital programme in Appendix C. All in favour? Thank you very much. Just move to agenda item 11, which is to close the meeting. So I would like to thank everyone for their attendance and contributions. I confirm that the next meeting will be scheduled for the 2:30 on the 14th of December. I will now formally close the meeting. All members of the public are requested to leave the building promptly. Please ensure that you have taken all of your personal possessions with you and return your visitor pass when you leave. So that concludes the meeting. Please can I confirm that the live stream has now stopped?